The Co-Create project is a large-scale research project funded by the European Union, and the main objective is to help prevent overweight and obesity among children, adolescents, and young adults. What is special with Co-Create is that we really aim to give young people themselves a voice and to hear what they think matters in terms to solve this large health and societal problem. We also are really concerned that too much effort is put on individual level interventions. And so in this project, we really aim at looking at more digital policies that really shape the environments that we live in, shape our societies, and the possibility that we as individuals and young people have to act healthy, to eat a healthy diet, and also be physically active in their everyday life. We also see that there are big differences between groups depending on their economic situation, regional differences, whether they live in urban or rural areas. And these are also elements that we really try to address within the Co-Create project.
COVID-19 has revealed many of the vulnerabilities that our systems face in addressing the obesity epidemic.
There are issues with a lack of political will, and some governments are reluctant to take action for a number of reasons, such as a lack of technical know-how on how to make policies, lack of resourcing, being influenced by the food and drink industry, which undermines efforts, and a lack of evidence on what works. Young people and people living with obesity are also excluded from policy development processes, and stigma and discrimination have a negative impact on policy development processes and political will. Negative language and framing of obesity is also a challenge, and human rights language and approaches are often not used.
And in that sense, it's also not like some other health issues that are connected to behaviors such as, let's say, smoking or alcohol, where you can really limit the product and that can have a correlation or a pretty decent effect also on the diseases it causes or the conditions it causes or they cause. Whereas in obesity, you can't just take away food from people. So it's a balancing act in essence. And then when we look at it through those lens, we see that our environments really aren't conducive to healthy behaviors. And it takes planning, it takes restructuring of our environments if we want to be very, let's say, health-oriented and efficient in reaching our health goals.
And the environment that we live in actually encourages us to eat a lot of high-energy foods and be inactive most of the time. It's because we have technology that takes us to different places, that saves us from work, and that is very entertaining to sit in front of the computer instead of doing physical activity.
I feel that with all the things that I have to do, I don't have time to practice as much exercise as I would like to practice, or cook as many healthy meals I should like to make. So I think that it's the most difficult challenge. The approaches should be easier and should be more oriented to working population and students, and teach them how to carry with a healthy lifestyle, even if you have not much time during your daily life.
We need to change society in a way that we can more easily make healthy choices.
Should young people have a role in this? Absolutely they should. And it's one of the things that we need to think about in the ways in which we construct our democratic systems, because the voices of young people are very much inadequately heard. And the nature of equity between generations, over time, is something that has largely been ignored. So absolutely young people should be involved, but right now they have much less of a voice than ought to be the case. That if we're serious about involving young people, we need to find out from them in ways that make sense to them that are accessible to them what works for them. And saying, oh, you can come to the table and, talk to a bunch of people like me may or may not be the answer. But I don't think that's for me to judge. I think it's really, really important that if we're serious about engaging young people in political processes, in decision making, that it's on their terms, not on our terms.
So let's say no policies for young people without young people.
And many studies are reporting that there are true benefits to including young people from the very beginning. So, for example, partnerships with young people as service users help to create more successful and sustainable services at the local level, and services that respond to young people's needs very directly. Studies are pointing to the fact that youth participation lead to more effective, more appropriate, more relevant interventions to improve children's lives, and that they increase young people's awareness of their own rights as citizens.
I think the big risk when we talk about youth engagement is that we as adults think that we know how best which topics or how we can involve youth. I think we need to talk to them and let them voice their own opinions.
So I think if we're going to find effective solutions, we need to do more than talk about youth. We need to start actively involving them in our projects. And I think real and meaningful youth participation is about giving young people room and information so that they can make up their minds about a topic and a process, and giving them access to often adult-based structures where decisions are reached, and giving them a real room to influence these processes. So the Child Rights Convention states that all children have a right to state their opinion, and that it's pertaining to personal as well as structural questions affecting them. And young people are the ones who will live the longest with the consequences of the policies that are pursued today. So young people should have an active role in policy making, of course. And I think it's important to move beyond tokenism and one-time events to make sure that youth participation becomes real and meaningful. Young people should be able to follow an entire policy-making process and receive the information that they need to participate.
Stepping out of formal processes and meeting youth in their comfort zone is one idea to consider, as well as creating a culture that is youth-friendly. This means we should make the policy process more accessible, less technical and jargon-free. It's important to think about equity when providing opportunities for youth.
Co-Create provides a fantastic model of providing youth with education and training in policy, research, advocacy to identify and develop policies that affect their food and physical activity environments, and then work with policymakers, civil society representatives, and business leaders to bring these policy ideas to life.
And we asked young people to tell us about, in their experience, the drivers of obesity. So from their perspective. And it wasn't that, what we found was that it wasn't that young people were reporting being unwilling to eat in a certain way or exercise in a certain way, all of the things that we think contribute to obesity. It was other factors that were getting in the way of them making the choices that they wanted to make. So we heard that their experience included, for example, lack of free time, pressures during the day that affected their mental health issues in and of themselves. So anxiety, stress, depression, all working towards them having less motivation, less willingness to make choices that they felt were healthier for them. And all of this came together to, as they reported, to have a really undue impact in how young people felt about themselves. Other factors that they mentioned were social media, so screen time, a really important contributor to how they were thinking of themselves, and that in itself had an impact, according to them, on their mental health, or lack thereof.
We've gathered Youth Alliance members from all of the countries we worked in the Co-Create Youth Declaration Task Force. We've been meeting up throughout the summer, and they've become young obesity prevention experts, and now they're using this expertise to draft a declaration that is stating some of the demands and ideas that young people in Co-Create share about policymaking and preventing obesity. If you're unsure about how to best involve youth, again, the solution is to talk to young people about how this can be done.
I think our role is to give our insights, our opinions, sharing our own experiences, and we should definitely have a seat at the table. I think that you don't need much to encourage youth engagement, because if we take a quick look at the world and especially to the young people, we see that ours is a very active generation, and I think the only essential thing to encourage youth engagement would be visibility. Show that you need help, value our opinions, and I think that's the most important thing, is really that to show, to tell that you need help, that there's an opportunity for them to speak up, and we would do the rest.
Like a good example, or a crucial example of where youth should be involved, is policies regarding restricting marketing of unhealthy food and beverages to children, given that young people have the best understanding of their views of marketing and how it consciously or unconsciously influences their preferences and their consumption of unhealthy foods.
I think that young people would be easy to get involved in how to kind of fight against the big powers of marketing of companies, or they could be interested in being involved in provision of school food, for example.
As youth, as young people, have different knowledge, because of our experience in today's society, we have different knowledge about the type of policies that could work when implemented nowadays. So we have, for instance, less money than the adults, so we tend to go to fast food restaurants where the food is less expensive. We spend more time on social media, so we are often more susceptible to advertisements.
People these days are very much dialed into the digital platforms, whether that be through social media, Instagram, TikTok, etc. And they are putting out content there. A lot of it is garbage, but a lot of it is really valuable. And even amidst the noise, you are able to see how young persons effectively leverage a message. Whether the message is entirely valuable, that's another debate, but their ability to connect and resonate to others in a way that we don't do, or that we have not done in the past through these kind of traditional channels, TV and radio and newspaper, print media, etc. Social media is a new and emerging space still, and we need to tap into these kind of potentials. So I think that the more and more that you engage, the better you create messages.
That ultimately, with this huge transition to digital working environments due to the coronavirus, there's never been a greater opportunity for youth engagement and for youth to be connected around the world on issues that matter to them. That one or two youth representatives cannot speak to the experiences of 1.2 billion youth across the world. So it's incredibly important for policymakers to engage multiple youth from different backgrounds, be it ethnic, cultural, socioeconomic, or geographic, with different lived experiences.
Co-create is also doing local projects, and I think that's very important because we are giving our opinions, we are building something from the zero, and we are trying to implement them here in our community and see if they work, if they don't work, but we are using our life experience and try to create a project that will be good for every young person. For instance, a youth task force for this kind, I don't know, to get some input from our generation and to know if, is this policy that we are doing, is this good? Do you think it will work? So I think that it would be very interesting if this kind of task force would be created. It could be with different people. One time is one group, other time is another group.
Youth engagement needs to be concrete, targeted, and supported with money, time, and knowledge from adults. If we provide young people, for example, with a small budget to test their ideas, we see through our research that they become very excited. I would suggest that we need to redesign schools. Schools should be focused on the general well-being and the general development of humans, of young people. Schools should focus on the combination of social, emotional, physical, and cognitive development. And in this broader perspective of well-being and development, it would be very normal to move and exercise and sport every day, and would be a routine activity to cook, maybe even to grow and harvest healthy food every day.
With some of the work that we're doing as part of the Co-Create project, we've noted a lack of public policy that focuses on increasing physical activity and improving mental health. Society isn't promoting these topics enough. Our environments don't support them, and therefore people just aren't able to access physical activity opportunities and mental health services very easily.
We have worked with the Scouts organization, so I think this was one of the key elements to the success that we have in Portugal, because they already give voice to the youth. They allow them to kind of give them opportunities to participate in also their own seminars and their own conference, and so they are used to think about this and other problems. So it was very interesting to learn that for Scouts, being a very, I would say, good with good lifestyle promotions, healthy lifestyle promotions, they didn't think so much about nutrition as well. So this was an opportunity for us in terms of the team, the Portuguese team, to actually give something back to the Scouts organization, to make them think a little bit more structured about the nutrition issues related with obesity.
I think we can do a lot by having structures in place like youth councils and youth chapters of political parties, interest groups, for instance, for the climate cause, where youth can get engaged and be involved together with other youth to influence policies. Of course, policymaking is policymaking. It doesn't mean that the youth will have their way, but that they truly listen to the youth view and not just not invite young people at all, or if they invite them, they only do it for show. So a true process where the young people are involved, that's what I would ask of the policymakers.
I think that closer collaboration with the local administration and local policymakers is really a key here. First of all, because these are the communities where young people really have something to say at the very moment. And secondly, they have the policymakers, so to say, within their reach, whereas if the engagement of young people at the national level is maybe a little bit more difficult to organize in a way that they really form a kind of formal stakeholders. What happened during the co-create is that some of the local policies, again, local policies, referring, for example, to what happens in terms of education within school, has changed. So again, this is the example of Świdnica, where the local authorities decided that they agree that because the youth has highlighted, have been highlighting that there is a need for some extracurricular education for them regarding the role of healthy diet and healthy nutrition in general. They have decided to support this idea and start and run the pilots for the additional educational program for young people funded by the local authorities. And they hope to evaluate it and check its effects in terms of feasibility and acceptability within the school. I think this is one example of a successful change. And what was here very important, I think both young people and policymakers were keen on that, first because of it was really something that would be available for everybody in the school, right? So it was very inclusive type of action.
And the single most important intervention to tackle obesity is to understand that there is no single most important intervention to tackle obesity. So stop thinking that this is something that can be dealt with a small number of relatively straightforward actions, and grasp the complexity of the problem and address it at structural level over the short, medium and long term in ways that focus on equitable responses for all and actively narrow inequalities rather than widening them.
Sometimes we also need that reassurance that the things we do matter and the things that we do, it's worth fighting for. So I think that's also very important, as much as listening to what young people have to say.
When you inculcate that from young, as you rightly said just now, that it tends to translate into adulthood. So habits are learned, and if you grow up with the wrong, quote unquote, or inappropriate practices, inappropriate beliefs which contravene an idea of optimum health and wellness, then that unfortunately tends to translate into adulthood. And it's going to become intergenerational as well, because you're only going to relay and model your beliefs and practices to the capacity that you have, to the capacity that you are taught that you know. So you then through no fault of your own, and this is by no means to place blame on any individual, but rather on a system which facilitates unhealthy and inappropriate practices and beliefs, and then is translated throughout the generations. So it's very much a fight uphill. It's very much a long haul in trying to address these issues. But if you don't start the discussion, then you don't get anywhere.